Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, cannabis socialite.
And I am Dashita Dawson, the weed head.
Hi, sis.
Hey, sis.
Hey, sis. On today's episode of She Blaze, we solve the mystery of who regulates Texas medical marijuana patients. The FDA says CBD company must pay. And we take a close look into cannabis conditional licenses.
And we know we need to look into those. But of course, before we get started, we're going to kick things off with the high of the week. And my high of the week is actually one of my favorite strains now. I've spent so much time in Portland and really trying all sorts of different strains. The diversity is important. But shout out to Loud, which is a Black-owned brand. Shout out to Jesse Horton and his 503 Wi-Fi. Loved it.
Yes, oh my God, I loved it too. And all my weed heads, they was out there. They was like, "Yo, that's what you got." I'm like, that's what I have.
I mean, just taking a picture is so frosty. It's piney. It's sweet. It is get shit done. It is 503 because that is the area code, of course, for Portland. But that Wi-Fi is about connecting you, baby.
Okay? Yes, definitely. It do connect you. Okay, it connected me, and I'm so glad we got to share it with each other.
Yes. Well, shout out to Loud. You want to check them out. They're Portland-based, again, brand, and 503 Wi-Fi, but they got a lot of good strains.
Yes. Whatever you get is going to be good.
Yes.
So my high of the week is actually a little bit more your high too, but it is Serena Williams' farewell tour. She'll be playing at the U.S. Open, and so we're going to check it out next week to say farewell to the greatest tennis player in history.
Listen, I am sad. I've already shed a tear. Y'all already know. This is my boo. I love her. We've grown up together, and she has been everything in the tennis world. And so I'm excited to share that with you.
Yes, and that's exciting. So that's part of exactly what I'll be doing this week, because there's a lot of things going on this week, but we're going to probably do non-cannabis things.
Yes.
Because we got so many cannabis tea to get into today.
Oh my God. Well, let's get into it.
Yes. Okay. So y'all, I'm cannabis all day, every day. And so if you've noticed, a lot more cannabis ads are coming to your screen. Mm-hmm. And I've been getting so many cannabis ads. And you know where they've been trying to advertise for me? To become a part of the Texas medical marijuana program. And I'm like, well, first of all, I live in Texas.
Right? Like, how are they getting information?
I'm going to need y'all to step y'all box. But, I also was interested because it started happening throughout all these cannabis platforms and stuff. And I'm like, wow, the way Texas is promoting their medical marijuana program, this better be the She's Not Eat. Well, it is not. Because their compassionate use program is not that great. It is a remix of the hemp farm bill. Mm-hmm. Texas is the second largest state in America, and they only got 13,000 patients. Like, what kind of number is that?
Yeah, it's a number of clearly a state that is not doing a really good job with their program. But it is interesting that they're starting to advertise now. I haven't been in that algorithm yet. That might be your Georgia stint because their cannabis program is very similar. And right now, 13,000 is like puff in the wind compared to the millions of people and millions of people of color that live there and could be utilizing cannabis as medicine. I'm very curious about a breakdown, because we haven't really done a deep dive into Texas because, again, this hemp remix means that I think it's up to 1% that you can have in the THC, which is still effective. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to make it like, oh, it's nothing, but it might as well be hemp. is what we say.
Yeah. And mine as well. You also don't get smokable flower, which is like the number one indicator. Even if your program looks like Florida's cartel, you know, they at least get flower, so it could be ran like how they want it to. You can't really run much. They are seeing some climb in their patient population as they add more conditions on to qualify for their medical marijuana program, because their program started qualifying slowly. But when they add PTSD and cancer, those type of things really, you know, encompasses a lot of people. PTSD could be for anything. And so they are seeing their stuff jump. So I'm going in and I'm digging in. I'm like, okay, well, who is regulating these things? You know, how are they actually getting their product? The state agriculture department licenses and give the regulatory framework to them to create, and their overhead through the agriculture. Well, their patient population, believe it or not, is managed by the Department of Public Safety. Yes. So when you think about the Department of Public Safety, you think about getting access to your gun license, getting access to permits for block parties, getting access to police officers. So why would your patient database be ran through Public Safety Department? And that is when I was like, Eureka. In Texas, you can't have a medical marijuana card and have a gun, even though you barely even need to register for a gun in Texas. You are not allowed to have that. So these two things that are collecting these informations at the same time in the same place.
Listen, I definitely am not seeing the dots be any clearer. But I also just am like, you know, I've talked about this before on She Blaze, where they set up the cannabis program is really important. Typically, medical cannabis programs are run by the Health and Human Services or whoever is in charge of the health authority.
Right. Exactly. I had to ask. I was like, so who is public safety again? I know we give them a lot in taxes, but normally they never touch us.
Yes, public safety is actually another way of saying police. In most states, that is what it is including. In Portland, in fact, 80% of the cannabis tax revenue was going to public safety before I started in my role as the cannabis program manager. And that included transportation is in there, but mostly it was police bureau.
Yeah, I'm not digging that at all, you guys. And check out the description box, because we link to all of the information, the stats. I also link to their Gov website, okay? Right on there it says, you know, authorized by the Department of Public Safety. And I thought that was odd. So we had to uncover this because, you know, we tell people in the South, go get your card just to protect you, just in case you have to pull a HIPAA and you're allowed to sue them and you have proof that you're a medical marijuana patient. But it doesn't matter if it's going to be under your public safety. I feel like it's hard to want to do that one in the great state of Texas.
I completely agree, especially if you're a person of color. It is really hard to trust that system, unfortunately. But it isn't the only system that has done this. I would still say that sometimes they'll put the licensing of the businesses under the public safety because they're so worried about people supposedly selling, diversion, et cetera, et cetera. But the patients, the individuals, are still primarily run through health.
Exactly. Medical, anytime it's medical, it automatically goes to your health department. The fact that the health department is not overseeing this is giving me PTSD of Minnesota and their health department oversees. And you know what's so interesting is that we say the card protects you, but in Texas, the card actually doesn't protect you because if you get stopped and you have smokable flower on you, your medical card does not protect you because smokable flower is not even included in that protection program.
In fact, I believe your medical card could actually be revoked or taken away. There are states like Arizona that if you do things that are part of diversion to the illegal market in any way, shape, or form, you could lose your privileges as a medical cannabis patient. And so it is important for you to just understand that and know that they're not putting in place these laws so that they can resolve some social justice issue that's been going on for decades. That is not these states. That's not Florida either. Florida want to make money, so they're being a little bit better and smarter with their assortment, but they don't care about freeing the people.
Right.
Okay.
And you want to know what's even more interesting about their medical program? There's no state fee. So normally when you get your medical card, you pay your state fee and your physician fee. And sometimes they waive the state fee, like in New York, if they want to increase their population, or physicians can, go down, go up, depending on doing what type of community programming. Well, their cards range from $60 to $200 just for no protection, child.
And that's only the physician's fee. And, looking at it from the physician side, that's actually not very expensive. When you look at your insurance bills, you'll see what they're covering. It's just that insurance doesn't cover this. So it becomes a very hefty expense, especially if you're disabled. I would add that having a free program, normally I would be giving a round of applause to Texas. But the fact that the free program is pushing people to sign up and declare that they are medical cannabis patients with only a 1% THC threshold in a non-flower state, under public safety, these are all red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. And so I wouldn't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. And you guys, y'all are asking to get smokable hemp, but y'all also need to be asking them to put your medical marijuana program in the health department.
Please, absolutely.
Okay? So that was our hot topic. I had to warn my people in the South because there's a huge population of Black and brown people out in Texas that are probably getting these, you could get your medical card for $60. We thinking that's a steal. And then $60, your gun is gone. You get it revoked if you stop. You can't protect yourself by...
I don't think they're offering enough for that. And I think most of the medical programs, unfortunately, in the country are not offering enough and could do more. But at the end of the day, it's the government who is confused. And it sounds like that confusion is still happening even at the federal level.
You are right about that. So let's get into hot topic number 2, because on the federal level, they are not only confused, but they're doing something that for real. They're doing something for the first time no one's seen before. Okay. Really, this is the first time we've seen something like this happen, where cannabis people are going to have to give money back. Okay. So the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission, and the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, we always got y'all name in our mouth. Hi, baby. They are making this one CBD company pay. So we know that the FDA has been sending cease and desist to cannabis companies for many, many reasons. But following this reason is because they are making false marketing statements saying that, they cure cancer, they cure acne, they can help you. And people are not liking it. And we heard a couple years ago that they started investigations into it. They even released companies' names that were being investigated. Well, this company was not actually released on their investigation. However, they were making false claims of saying that their products were going to help your acne, going to help your indigestion. They're named under CBD Dicet, or also known as Cushly. And so what the FDA is doing to them that is so interesting is that they're making pay their customers back their money for actually, giving them this product that doesn't match the marketing. And basically they'll be refunding 576 people, which is $36 each. And that totals to $21,000. which isn't a lot of money. No shade, it is, but to a business, it's not. Especially if they're doing this first, ever happening. I thought they were going to be like 50,000, 60,000, no, 21,000. And so it got us into looking because there's no information on what they did, what they were marketing. There's no testing. We don't even know why they made them give their money back to customers versus the 6 that they announced they were looking into.
Well, first of all, what kind of investigatory skills you got that the people that you do this type of reprimand with are not on your list? Like, I'm confused about that. It's like making a list, checking it twice, check it a third time, please, because you missed somebody. But second, I'm confused because there's a lot of words you threw out there. And I find that, again, that's what I mean by the confusion. The FTC, usually the Federal Trade Commission is involved when you are doing bad business. It means that you are saying your product does something and it maybe does the opposite. I don't know if everybody remember the Different World episode in Dwayne Wayne is starting to sell products to the black women on campus and it start turning their skin different colors. Somebody grew an eyebrow hair in the middle. Just crazy stuff happening. That's usually when the FTC is involved. The FDA has been involved with a lot of cease and desist because what they don't like is when you make a claim but you don't properly do a couple of things. The first being, if you're going to make a real efficacy claim, meaning it does this, you usually are going to have an FDA approved trial that proves that claim. And typically big pharmaceutical and big consumer packaged goods, those are the companies that can afford the $80,000 plus bill that usually comes with doing an FDA trial, doing FDA approval. Right now, as we talk about, Epidiolex is the only FDA approved CBD product in the market right now. It ain't the best CBD product in the market. We'll talk about why in another episode. But so FDA approved don't mean it's the best. You heard it here. But they have sent cease and desist to companies like Charlotte's Web, which we use often and are what we call cannabis pioneers in the industry, where they are telling them, hey, you're making a claim, but you're not properly stating, A, the FDA did not approve this, because you can put a little asterisk and do that. And most people, that's what they do. Most people are paying $80,000. Victoria's Secret wasn't paying $80,000 to the FDA so that we could make a claim when I was working there related to beauty. But the FDA is part of all cosmetics, drugs, all of that, not just food and drugs. It's like a little cosmetic section in there as well. So I feel like I'm confused. Did they make them remove it because they're claiming these things can be, remedied by CBD? Because by the way, they can. Everything they talked about, indigestion, acne or skin, the CBD or cannabinoids in general impacting with the endocannabinoid system definitely impact these things. We just haven't proven it in America. We haven't had FDA trials on it. We've had FDA trials as it pertains to Epidiolex on epilepsy, and so that's a claim they can make. But the byproduct of that is that people taking that are going to have all these other benefits that they cannot make claims on. Why did they remove them? Or was it that this product was trash, it didn't have anything in it, and they made people feel like they were getting something that was going to be good and instead either made them sick or really didn't do nothing?
Oh, that's a great question. And Marijuana Moment reached out to them, but unfortunately, like most governments do, they have no comment other than the press release. And the press release just said, you got to pay. No explanation why. There is a part of me that feels like they may not have anything in their product, because we know that we've seen independent journalists test these products and reveal that it is not what it say it is. But again, they're sending out cease and desist. For all my Delta 8 people, come listen. Test your product.
Yes.
Prove that it at least is Delta 8. Prove that it at least has a little teensy smidge of CBD, because what's going to happen is they're going to start making you pay the money back, and it's going to be more than 500 people.
Absolutely. Right now, most CBD companies aren't seeing a ton of penetration, but we still are seeing those type of studies that are showing not just CBD, but THC, like the testing, whether it's legal market or not, we don't know what we're getting. And more, that's going to become the issue. I definitely think, though, I want to just pay attention to the fact that a lot of people believe because cannabidiol or CBD doesn't make you feel high that you can say you have it, but don't have it. I've seen that even in Sephora brands that are talking about hemp seed oil that they have or hemp seed infused. And the reality is there's no cannabinoids in the hemp seed. It's primarily in the flowers. There's barely any in the stalk. And so they know we don't know that mostly as consumers. And so they're banking on it, using marketing to make you believe you have something. And then you're wondering why it's not as effective. It also does the cannabis industry a bad rap. So I'm one of those people, I'll call you out. I've been using the same CBD, hemp infused CBD company for almost 5 years now. It's very hard for me to break from it because I'm loyal and I know it's going to work. And I have had too many times people reach out to me and said, I tried this, it didn't work. I tried that, it didn't work. And that is the challenge we have with this industry. Snake oil salespeople trying to tell you that you have cannabinoids in their product of such high amount too. And usually it's nowhere near or anywhere like on the same rating scale as what they're advertising, and that's giving a false experience to the consumer.
Yes. So if you were one of the consumers that bought it, just so you know, you'll be paid either via PayPal by September 2022 or by check in the mail by November 2022.
But look, I gotta say something because that is very curious. Best believe you better take the mail because PayPal may hold your funds because this is still CBD.
You about to hold my little lousy ass $36?
Listen, PayPal is crazy, but that's what's so funny too. Is this the government that's paying them back, or is it the company? Because we've had so many clients that are not anything but CBD, and they have had their PayPal frozen.
Well, how? I don't know how the government pays people in PayPal because I don't know. You know, I'm an independent contractor, so we be zeroing out taxes. You hear me? No portion wood, no tax debt over here.
No debt and no payback.
Yes, because I'm an independent contractor. You heard? Being a consultant, be like, but no, seriously, you guys, how is the government paying you back via PayPal?
It sounds a little crazy to me, but one of the things I will say, if you're given a choice, take the check. It will take you longer, but at least you'll get it. With PayPal, it may automatically, the name of their company is Kush whatever. It could be immediately flagged as suspicious. I'm just saying, I haven't had a PayPal in 5 years.
I know that's right. Okay. Well, that is some true tea, you guys. Check your mail. Yes. And keep checking with us because hot topic number 3, we got to give our hats off. You know what I'm saying? You got to give your flowers what flowers is due.
Definitely.
And New York, we deserving some flowers out here, you guys.
Yes.
So New York regulators actually just released the application process to be able to apply to be a part of a conditional retail dispensary licenses. And it's really like this great thing that they're doing that I'm super excited. And I want you to explain it and why it's such a great thing because it really tells why we're having this episode.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm excited to explain it because it is groundbreaking, right? But a lot of people are getting it wrong, Ice. A lot of people getting it wrong. And that's why I'm like, all right, not a lot of people read law, read regulations. That's something we've had to like literally learn on the job. And now, you know, it is my job. So I'm gonna break it down real quick. So we had the opening this past week of the conditional adult use retail dispensary license applications. And what makes this particular CAURD application, is what they've been calling it, really important is because it's the first time a state has prioritized ensuring that people who have been what they call justice impacted, either arrested and or convicted related to cannabis possession in New York State, get an opportunity to open this market. Other states have opened and they almost always allow the current medical operators to transition in through some fee. We don't even want to talk about Connecticut and what they're doing, but that has been the history. Even in New Jersey, they have allowed the current retailers within the medical program, which were vertically integrated initially, same same as in New York, they've allowed them to cross over. In this case, New York said, we're not doing that. And the MRTA, the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, which was passed in last year, March 31st, 2021, gives them the precedent to do so. And so we've been seeing this rolled out in pieces. And for a lot of people, if you're like me, you like puzzles, you start to try to figure out how all these pieces fit together, and they do. So I got to roll people back just a little bit. Even though this license was available this week, it is accompanying a set of other licenses that have already been open, a set of other conditional licenses.
Right.
So,
and what's the difference between this CAURD license and the previous conditional licenses? Because we've seen cultivation, you know, they're in the ground. We've heard of manufacturers. So what's the difference other than it being retail, of course?
Well, the first is, for the first two licenses, they were very focused on New York growers, New York small farmers, and especially those small farmers who had previous hemp experience. And so to be able to cultivate the first flowers for the New York adult use market, you had to show you had 2 years of prior hemp experience before December 2021, and you really were prioritizing small farmers. And so New York has been cultivating since pretty much March in an outdoor way, and so that does produce some limited flower options, but flower will be available. And then second license, also conditional, that they moved into a permanency one, is the processing license, and that means that you had to been converting flower from hemp flower into oils for some time before, also showing some previous experience. So they've given out hundreds of licenses already. We have the pipeline. Now, where are these products going to be sold? And these products are going to be sold in these retail dispensary licenses that were announced. And these are going to be owned by people who were justice impacted.
Okay. So what is I mean, you know, it's always fancy. Every other state, it's like every state has its own terminology, but it's like, what's justice impacted? Because I mean, I got a parking ticket, and I heard somebody quoted me, said, listen, if you have a car in New York, if you pay less than $1,000 a year in parking tickets, you win that. As far as I'm concerned, that is justice impact.
Yes, and you wouldn't be wrong. Listen, that is outrageous. However, we're specifically in this case talking about impacted by the injustices of the war on drugs, and that meant actual cannabis arrests. So many people have heard me say many, many times, and I will say it like a drum beat. New York has arrested more people for cannabis possession than any other state in America. So New York has the biggest thing to be accountable for as far as people are concerned. Arrests happen not just for people who, again, it wasn't people selling it, it's possession. That means you could just be a consumer, and that could have been an end of your life as you know it in a real way. So justice impact means that you were arrested and or convicted in New York State before it legalized, which again was March 31st of 2021. Or you are connected to that person, meaning you may be a parent to someone like that, you may be a child to someone like that, or you may be a spouse to someone like that. And because New York has done this to so many people, there are millions of people that would qualify for justice impacted.
Okay, cool. And then there's also something different with the retail conditional license versus the previous ones, because they're helping with location, right?
Yeah, so everybody knows that New York real estate is like terrible. And the minute that the state legalized, real talk, it went from a downward swing because of COVID to like people being ridiculous. And real estate being another one of those industries like banking and gas where we don't put a check on what people can charge. And as a result, we have seen that skyrocket in the New York, great state of New York, especially in New York City. And so what the Office of Cannabis Management has done in partnership with the Dormitory Authority for the state of New York, DASNY, their executive director or president, Ruben McDaniel, is actually part of the Cannabis Control Board. They have been working since the beginning of the year, identifying retail locations that could be turnkey for the licenses. So if you get one of these CAURD licenses, you get an adult use retail dispensary license, you will be receiving with that license a turnkey retail location.
Okay. Yes. All right. Way to make it impressive, New York.
I mean, that Listen, the very first thing everybody going to be, they've been on is how you going to get your location. How are people who are just as impacted going to get up and running? And I think that this has been very smartly done. Again, it rolled out in pieces, and there are people who can't connect the dots. I've been connecting the dots. I'm also connected behind the scenes, but I also think it's important for us to start playing it out for people. And I want to shout out Office of Cannabis Management. They've hosted a series of webinars and IG lives. Their technology piece of it integrated has been top notch. It's been impressive. They want you to understand. They're not trying to make it so that it's confusing. There's one more part of this though.
Right, which is basically that they did a population analysis on how many retail stores they should open up in this first round.
They did. And it's not just about the population. There is an important part of that. And you're seeing that they are now looking to, in this first round, license 150 retail dispensaries. And they disperse them throughout the city and the state, and the reality is that some people are not that happy with the way things have shaken out.
I mean, some people aren't that happy. New Yorkers is going to be drama, but once some tax revenue dollars come in, people will be jumping for joy.
Absolutely, but there's been a lot of talk about the 20 that Long Island is supposed to get because, of course, people think Long Island, how can there be just as impacted? In fact, I like to use Huntington County in New Jersey as an example. Not a lot of Black and brown people live there at all, but you are 10 times more likely to be arrested for cannabis possession as a Black person in Huntington County as compared to the rest of the country. And the reason is because not a lot of Black people live there at all. And so for some of the people, especially people who are of West Indian background and Hispanic background, whose parents moved out to the island as a way to give them a better life, and this was the case for me, a lot of my Brooklyn friends moved out there, they were more targets because they were the Black face among not that many Black faces. And so Long Island absolutely has just as impacted individuals there. But more often, there is a real look at what's the real estate available to be able to make turnkey retailers available, right? And so I think we've got to balance the population with what land and what real estate is also there.
Yes, heck yeah. I mean, drop some comments in and let us know, okay, drop them, because at the end of the day, you going out to Hamptons to have a good time, your car smell like a little bit of weed, they gonna pull you over, and now you just got something in the middle of Long Island, you only here for the weekend. So
I mean, that's so true. And I do feel like there's just so many experiences that we've had growing up where Long Island was the place that you go and get in trouble. And unfortunately, there's also a lot of universities that are minority serving in terms of them being out on Long Island, whether it's Hofstra or Long Island University, we've got to make sure they're protected as well and they have access as well. It's like, what?
I completely agree. And, this is just the first round too, people. This is the way so we can turn these conditional licenses to real licenses. This is round one. There is next year. There is the year after next. We thought we wouldn't even legalize, but here we are. So you could rush and try to be a part of the first 150. Good for you, but there is openings after that.
And ancillary. And before we move on, because we do want to make conditional licenses real licenses, the last qualification for New York, justice impacted, and then the other thing that you have to prove is if you're a justice impacted individual, you have to prove that you have been part of a business, 10% or more ownership in a business that has been profitable for at least 2 years. They don't have to be consecutive years, but you have to show 2 years of profitability. And a lot of people have pushed back about that because they really do believe that, yes, this ruins your life. We know it. We've seen it, right? But there is part of a critical time period between 18 and 21 where it actually impacts people at a higher prevalence. And so there are definitely people in my age range, 40 and older, that absolutely something happened between 18 and 21. And even though they may have struggled in their 20s, they overcame in their 30s, and now they're in their 40s, and they definitely have been a part of something positive. So I don't think New York is going to have a difficult job filling these seats. But what we do need to realize is that it ain't just these seats, okay? There's going to be more retail licenses, way more, to order of 10 times more, right? Like there's also going to be more licenses, period. There are 9 in the MRTA, and there's ancillary. This industry will not be built by just who touches the plant. In fact, most of the work is going to happen in the picks and shovels. That's what I talk about in my workbook. But yeah, at the end of the day, if the government isn't getting people from conditional to permanent, we have a problem, Houston.
Problem for that. And so, sis, get your little candle business documents together, because they say you could do any business.
Any business.
So, you know, that little side hustle with your candles, put it on there. That counts.
And it doesn't have to be the same business that's going to get the license. Like, all you have to show is the business for the license. It can be 100% yours, or it can be 51% or more. You put together a separate team for that license application. You just have to have a qualifying business. And last thing, qualifying business, they also have nonprofit qualifying. And so if you've been serving this justice impacted community for a while, underfunded, and you have figured out, hey, this is something that you want to do, you have that opportunity to also be eligible and apply for this.
So we are super excited, and the applications is open. Hopefully nobody shut it down. You know, when it's like everybody sworn to the thing.
They'll give an update. I want to find out too. Like how many people have applied so far.
Yeah, well, we'll let y'all know in a couple weeks because, you know, we got to get the reviews in, because there are a lot of licenses, conditional licenses that are being reported on, especially as we're having this Green Coast Green Rush happening. You know, there are many conditional licenses, and I feel like in cannabis we jump for joy.
Yes.
So that's why I made this a main topic, and I was like, girl, get your Inspector Gadget gear on, honey, because we need to figure out really what these conditional licenses are. They're also sometimes called temporary license, what these are, and like, you know, how people qualify for them and what happens, right? Because if this is just a temporary permit, how do you get a real one?
Exactly. So like, where do we start? This is so important because it's a phase for every single state, nearly.
Yeah, definitely. So we first are going to start and break down this conditional license and what's the difference between a conditional license and, I guess, a regular license. You know, is there a difference, right?
Yes, there is. And obviously, you think about the term conditional. It is on conditions. A conditional acceptance to a college is on conditional. This is a conditional acceptance until you show us your high school diploma. This is the same concept with licenses, whether it's temporary or not. And every state has ability for you to change your conditional into something permanent, but it changes based on the state, on what they require. One of the biggest opportunities you have with a conditional license is to be able to raise money. And so it's almost like saying, I have my stamp of approval from the government, and now I'm a legitimate business in terms of viability. It's not just a hope and a dream, especially in cannabis, but you are not a full licensee just yet.
Well, let me ask you something. If you're not a full licensee, can you open up your business?
It depends on the state. Now, in some states, and we're going to be breaking them down, you cannot open up a business, and you cannot even sell one thing until you have a full license. That, in some jurisdictions, that is the city of Portland. But in other places like California, you can.
Right. Wow. See, the fact that it's different from state to state, that's so interesting. So you can, some you can't. So we broke down what is a conditional license. Is a temporary license that, depending on your state, you may or may not be able to operate, but you could raise coin. Oh, is this how we begin on them little air stops from the multi-state operators?
Listen, that is exactly in some ways how, but it's also small operators. The conditional license was not even something that existed before we started talking about small operators, equity. It's now prevalent because this is supposed to be the on-ramp for small operators. Conditional license fees tend to be not as much as the permanent. Usually it is on condition of showing you have real estate, showing that you have municipal approval, and paying additional money to convert yourself from a conditional license into a real license. In some ways, using the college analogy, you can tell I have college-bound 18-year-old. But when you get accepted, it's a conditional acceptance until you show your diploma. But it also is a conditional acceptance until you pay that money to enroll. And so it's one of those things where you got to own the acceptance too. So I am always curious about the conversion rate. The conversion rate is what percentage of conditional licenses are converting to permanent ones. And that conversion rate is something that all regulators really should be watching, because it determines whether or not your regulatory framework is conducive to what you want it to do, which is make the conditional pathway an on-ramp into the permanent one.
Yes. And in the markets that have been around longer, we're actually hearing about some data reports. It also makes me a little nervous about the equity people, because this is how you get these licenses that you don't know when it expires, how it's going to happen. And even hearing in Portland, you guys can't even open up until, you actually get a real license is a little nerve-wracking. But then it's nerve-wracking if you open up without the real license.
It is. It is.
Yes.
There's no win.
Exactly. So let's talk about some of these baby states and by baby states, I mean these states that just came on in the last 2 years that are doing licensing. And this is also how the state starts to make money from the industry as well, without the taxes of the consumer, you guys.
Absolutely. Now, in a lot of jurisdictions, the licensing revenue is very different from the cannabis tax revenue. It's so important that I call that out, because people confuse that all the time.
Okay.
The cannabis tax revenue in many of the early jurisdictions is not really used to run the cannabis program or the cannabis office. But in some of the newer ones, like New Jersey, portions of that money is being used for that, whether it's for the social equity office or what have you. So there are some elements of it. I have integrated elements within the city of Portland as well. Part of my money management is through cannabis tax revenue, funding my social equity and educational development program. But the main part of my job is managing the licensing and compliance revenue that comes in from issuing conditional license, fee reductions, all of those things that people to start a business require.
Right. And that's the money that you guys use to pay the actual bureau and get it running.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so that's really how the government make their money off us, y'all.
The licensing fees are not supposed to be on a profitability, so we call it a cost recovery, right? It's a cost recovery program, meaning all we're trying to do is charge enough to recover the cost of running a good program,
right,
not a shitty program, okay?
Right.
And so when you see your licensing fees be real high, but the program is real trash, and I mean program as far as the business is concerned, what you're getting from your program, then you should be questioning. And if I were a City of Portland licensee before I started, I would be questioning. We was doing everything manually. Now we finally have technology. We were running a surplus because we weren't spending the money on the technology. Right. It's sort of, you
have to spend the money.
You have to spend the money. The government sometimes is afraid to spend the money in progressive states like Oregon, but then in more states like New York, they spend the money on whatever. And then you're like, wait, you spent the money on what? After the fact.
Right.
So it's like you got to find a happy medium. You need a driver who's going to make the right decision to turn right or to turn left without damaging the car and harming the passengers.
Okay. Well, I know some buses out here that could use that license course, okay, and they bus drivers, honey. Yes. You got a license to do that too. Yes. But so some of these baby license states like Illinois. Mm-hmm. Illinois recently just awarded 182 conditional licenses through their administration in July and early August. Yes. Which we did find out is that these is licenses from 2020, 19 and whatever.
Yes, they're very old applications that have finally gotten out of litigation and court related stuff so that they can finally announce who these people were.
And this is their first round of conditional license. And because it's so new, because people in Illinois like to sue real quick, we haven't heard anything about any lawsuits. People aren't upset because they were doing it before the conditional process. Now, how long does it take for them to be up and running. They do have like 100+ days to get up and running now being approved through their conditional licenses.
Yes, so that's the other thing. Conditional license can put you on a clock. If you are a struggling entrepreneur, being put on a clock can be sometimes the worst type of anxiety. You lose all your edges trying to meet that 120 or 160 day requirement. And oftentimes that requirement is related to real estate and municipal support, depending on the state's legislation.
Could you imagine 2019 pre-COVID, I turned in this doggone application for this thing. I'm finally getting approved. And you told me I got 100 days. Y'all had 400 days.
Like you had 4 years. No, the fact of the matter is like that's actually why I love doing this show with you, because it's my therapy, because I say this to myself all the time. And trust me, there are regulators there probably saying it to themselves as well. You set people up for the okie doke. How dare you rush me now that you finally done got your ish together? But the good news is most times they don't want to have a high attrition rate. They don't want to lose these licensees, certainly, especially if they're black and brown in a state like Illinois, where they've been talking about ain't no black and brown operators, right? And so they do have an ability to extend that deadline, if you will.
Well, y'all gonna have to, okay, because y'all tried it, all right? You tried it, and basically it's like, that puts people in the position where it's like you might be forced to sell your conditional license, which we have seen before, sell more shares of it to get up and running quicker. And honestly, like I would be really, really, really mad if that was me.
Not to mention, right, these same people, they entered into the license thinking that they were probably going to have that fast turnaround once they got approved. And they probably thought they'd get approved in a matter of months because that was what was expected. So they probably already secured real estate. They've probably been sitting on a lease or some sort of payment that they're making with interest, by the way, every single month. And so in my opinion, personally, I think the government owes these people some money, let alone trying to rush them. Some would say, well, you've been waiting all these years. Why aren't you ready? But it's the same thing. It's the same as if you cook food for someone. At some point, my kitchen is getting shut down and it's getting clean. You're going to have to get your food out the refrigerator, make your own plate, heat it up, and the like. That's, that's what happens. So, to me, I feel like that is where I struggle with the government's expectation for unrealistic expectations for people. Right. You've already put them through a lot. Most of these people have been spending a lot of money already just trying to stay legitimate, trying to stay ready, right? And now they're here and it's time, but the people who are going to move faster are the, like what we've been calling the not so real equity licenses in Illinois, where they're just more like the slave master clause, meaning I have a lot of money, but I hired or I employ a lot of people from these historically excluded communities. And that is a lot of why there's been so much pushback in Illinois.
Okay, between the cap licenses too, because how I feel about some damn license caps. I'm like, okay, you affect the licensing process like that. It's different having first round, second round, third round, and then, okay, well, we have this regular process like we are proving how we approve restaurants, how we approve like driver's license. We already have this process set down after 3 rounds, so there's no cap. But just to be like cap, like y'all capping for this, okay? Y'all capping 3 years later after not having getting your conditional license for so long because you're in litigation because of the cap.
Yes, absolutely. And then I think Illinois is going to have to look at other states, because we do see already that other states are running into some challenges.
Child, yes, New Jersey, for example, we gave many kudos, many online applauses for people that have gotten their conditional license in New Jersey.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And in New Jersey, are you, just confirm for me, are you allowed to operate with your conditional license? Because I could not find that information out, CRC.
No, and that's actually very clear on CRC's site.
I didn't see it.
To me, it is. One of the things, again, I'm a regulator, so I will know which way to navigate. Sometimes we don't make it intuitive to the consumer. We're making it intuitive to us. And I know that because I just did that in Portland. I had to rearrange some things. Feedback from people who are using your site who are not government regulators or within the government, so critical. And so I think hopefully CRC is getting that. But in New Jersey, no. When you have a conditional conditional, they're putting you on the clock. They're giving you an opportunity to get more investment. They're giving you that time to get the municipal approval. They're giving you that time to get the real estate locked in. And you have a certain amount of days to come back and flip that. And you will pay a little bit of money more to flip that, depending on your level that you've come in for the conditional license.
Yes. So we've been clapping for joy in New Jersey because they've given several different types of conditional license, from cultivation to dispensary. There's even testing they've given. So they literally went through the process of starting to give conditional license. But what we find out is you can't operate, but you also, this helps you secure your location. So even though you have like an idea where you want your business to be on the application, you have to bring a letter of intent to the municipality to get approved.
Yes.
And so now we are seeing a lot of suits, a lot of claims, a lot of like going back and backtracking. And specifically, I'm talking about one in particular in Hoboken. So what happened is we got released a conditional license because it's always like a bulk. They never just like, oh, here's that one license y'all asked for.
Right.
So it's a release of many, many licenses. And in Hoboken, these people put this as their area, and they got the conditional license. The following day or two, the control board made it so that they can only have 6 cannabis things in their area of Hoboken. And so their conditional license just did not qualify in that 6.
Yeah, so let's also clarify, because now we get to have the fun game of state versus local. New Jersey passed a law that we thought about it, that they were giving the municipality way too much power, and they're going to start seeing this. So the state has essentially said, hey, you're good enough to be in a business, you will do well, and here we're giving you the conditional license. And they've now gone back to their jurisdiction, who over the course of the last 6 months, Hoboken has been discussing putting a cap on the number of retailers. I actually was advised on this, and I advised opposite of a cap. So was another person who was coming from the California market, also advised opposite of a cap, but they went ahead and go and put a cap anyway, the city council for Hoboken. And the Hoboken Cannabis Control Board, which is all of 3 mofos, they are the ones that get to say yay or nay on whether or not someone gets to open. And so the 3 people that looked at it, 1 said yay and 2 said nay to this particular retailer or conditional licensee.
Yes. And they now put in a claim because they want to see why they say nay, right? Because this is technically public information. It's supposed to be.
Is.
And if y'all are take a vote on no, you have to tell me why you voted no against me. And they don't want to.
No. And that is something that I feel very strongly about as a government officials, that we are definitely time crunched, but there's always an opportunity to explain why someone doesn't get a grant, or at least give them their score. In this case, it is pretty clear. I think the city council lead also called out that, hey, we have purposely limited how many dispensaries we're going to have in Hoboken. That's their bad. Hoboken is whack for that. I'm just going to say what it is.
It ain't even that residential.
It's not. Y'all are missing out on the tourism, and there are bar after bar after bar. The analysis I did basically placed that they want to have 6 dispensaries, but there are hundreds of bars and liquor stores. So if we're comparing it for the purpose of recreational replacement,
right,
not to mention the medicinal part, but the recreational replacement only, they didn't do a good analysis on the money. They didn't look at the fact that Illinois is getting more tax revenue from cannabis than alcohol now. They did not pay attention to the data.
You want to know what they paid attention to? The coin, honey, making different things like that. You got to look around. Big Pharma is New Jersey.
You're right.
And when you are in Big Pharma land, that is who is reigning supreme.
That's actually a very good point. I didn't even put 2 and 2 together, but we could always count on Big Ice for finding the conspiracy. And we're not talking about a theory, because people conspiring is in fact a conspiracy. And I do think that Big Pharma is conspiring as it pertains to cannabis. I don't think that. We know that. We see that one part of the company will be part of a positive campaign around cannabis, and another part doing the opposite.
Right. Exactly.
That's called you have money to waste, by the way. Can you imagine? That's like having the door open with your air conditioning on.
we would get cussed out.
I'm just saying, but that's what is happening.
I don't care how much cannabis they done had. But yes, so New Jersey is definitely struggling now to be able to figure out the mesh between municipality and the state. I'm very curious to see the percentage of what's going to happen in New Jersey when multiple conditional licenses may not be able to open because they need the full license, they need approval by the municipality, and they need like a whole bunch of money in cash flow without selling their soul.
Well, to be honest, I think we'll watch it, but I think that the Cannabis Regulatory Commission for New Jersey knows this. They've said this on the record. Some of them have been advocates prior and said that, and on the record as well. And so I do think that we know that they know that that is going to be a challenge. And they have made a call to, in previous months, municipalities to be cooperative. And there are some that are doing great. I would say Trenton and the mayor there. But then there are some that it's like mixed bag. In the same breath that the Newark mayor wants to do stuff, the police chief is like, no, police can't use cannabis. So I think we have to figure out our relationship with cannabis. Is going to take more than 1, 2, or 3 rounds of licensing after 80 plus years of destroying it.
Exactly. And we're going to keep our eyes on you, and we're going to make sure your hand is outside of the cookie jar. But we want to also know, really, like, to your point, some people aren't going to be operating, some people are. What happens after the conditional license? How do you move forward? Right? And we're now seeing it in mature markets like California, where 75% of their licenses are still temporary many, many years later.
Listen, this is the real tea. And that's the part that I think surprises so many people within the industry, is that California always boasts as the largest, the first, the biggest, and not necessarily the first in adult use, but the first in medical. And yet there's still so much we can learn from it, and it's largely what not to do. This is one of those examples. What is their conversion rate? It's very, very, very low. Yes. If you have 75% of your market are conditional licenses, this is a state that allows you to get your conditional license and then you can start selling. Right. Or you can start being in business. It's not just selling, it's growing, it's processing, it's all of that.
Right. Exactly. My internet is having a little technical difficulties, but what they're saying is that, out of the 12,000 licenses that they have in cannabis, only 3,000 is actually full license process. And what happened is basically California set up a whole bunch of deadlines, okay,
and requirements.
Yes, they set up a whole bunch of deadlines and requirements, and basically they gave themselves deadlines for a certain number of years in order for their temporary license to transition into actual full license adult use licenses. And they saw that people were unable to do that by the deadline. They originally gave themselves a deadline of 2019. And what was some of the deadlines to be able to do it? They had to go through a very extensive, environmentally friendly, review and approval in order to have a full license, right? They also had to have a certain amount of money to be able to get the full license, so they have to additionally pay that fee. But the thing about the environmental license, the environmental review and approval that was so interesting is that they had not set up an actual review that could be approved for. That is what took so long. They didn't realize that until 2019, when it's the same year as the deadline. So they ended up moving it back, and they had to move it back again because only a few people could afford to do it. Mm-hmm. And they moved it back 3 times before they were like, all right, 2026, you guys, we're going to have it on, we're going to have it on deck.
I think this all sounds crazy to me. And it's, as always, California may be doing too much. I'm very opinionated. If you haven't already known, welcome to She Blaze. But the fact of the matter is, this is too much. Cali was trying to do too much. this is also like a clash of big companies taking advantage of the fact that you can operate even with conditional licenses. A lot of big companies came in there. They don't have any anti-monopoly type of laws in Cali at this point around cannabis. So you can go in there and you can literally buy 25 licenses that give you a vertically integrated operation, and they can all be conditional, and you can still be moving and grooving and making money. And you could have sold the company twice over in this time period and still been conditional. What we're finding is the big companies are taking advantage of it. Big money is taking advantage of it. But meanwhile, on the opposite end, what conditional licenses were used, I guess, put in place for anyway, the equity related operators are not able to move forward. They are actually now undervalued, right? In terms of trying to raise money. The market is changing so drastically, and sales changing drastically, and so investment is changing drastically. And the conditional license is now not as high of a value as it used to be previous to 2019. The uncertainty of its conversion also makes it not a great investment opportunity. And the reality is, it is one thing to not be converting people because the 5 things you put on the list that are accessible to them is inaccessible for other barriers. It's another thing altogether, California, for you to be the main reason why the people cannot cross over, even the people who want to, because some of these folks with money do want to. But if you don't even have criteria in place, you don't have that ability for the environmental aspect in place, it doesn't make it a viable opportunity. I feel like they were trying to do too much. Yes, does the cannabis industry play in sustainability related to global environment, global warming? 1,000%. Do we need to solve all of this in the first round of conditional? No. Matter of fact, we need to flesh out more of the problems before we start even trying to create solutions. I feel like they've created a really very, very bulky process, and it still hasn't really panned out for improved environmental impact. The 25% that are licenses, it's just, for me, when I talk with them and my work that I've done as a consultant, it's just more red tape.
Well, they want to remove the temporary one. So that is really why they give themselves the deadline. They want to remove this temporary stamp of license and approval. They want you to be able to be licensed or not licensed. And so they are still working out this program as far as the environment and being able to help people afford to, because the number one thing is the monies, yes, is to be able to afford this review and afford to be able to be approved or not. So, a lot of the equity applicants, which again, we are still seeing is less than 10% of the market, are really struggling. And so, this is what happens when, you don't have a process of how to really move your temporary into your full. And you allow them to also open business, because people also get very comfortable in that temporary license place. And then you forget, oh my God, I got approved for a year temporary. You forget the whole thing. And the temporary process, oh, by the way, is different from the real process.
Yes, but also one last thing, you forget until you have an emergency like COVID, and now you're conditional and you're not qualifying for the benefits of a full licensee. Whether it's emergency relief, you had to be a full licensee in our program to be able to actually get emergency relief, not somebody with a temporary or conditional or what have you. And so I do think it's important to recognize that 75% of the California market is not qualifying for the new things that have come down the pike through the governor's office as well.
Well, what they're trying to do is spend $100 million in these different municipalities. The government's giving $100 million to be able to help these cannabis companies, especially social equity applicants and license holders, to go through this process.
I want to say that sounds great, and I want to give a round of applause, but I would be insincere if I did so. $100 million so people could pass one of your newly created environmental sustainability tests when the homeless population is so ridiculous. Sometimes I feel like we don't have a good prioritization. I want these businesses to be sustainable. I think that's going to be a long-term strategy that we have to take that approach. The fact that it costs $100 million for these businesses, or that it could even get near that number for these businesses to be able to pass the test, is a problem I think that California has, where you want to be progressive, but it's only for the rich. And it's only for the people who have access to the progression. If you are not able to pay to do recycling in the way you're supposed to, if you're not able to participate, then you are not reaping the benefits. And I think Cali's going to have to fix that. That's crazy. So yeah, do I think $100 million going to just that alone versus the failing businesses that have been robbed in Cali and Oakland? I think of all the stories we've covered, $100 million for startup money. It is ridiculous. And when you look at the numbers paired up, it starts to show you that they value their own cleverness and programming than they do actual success of the businesses.
Well, my dear, that was quite a damn read on this Saturday.
I'm saying, well, you know, it had to be said.
I will give a clap, but it wouldn't be sincere.
It wouldn't be sincere. Because it sounds good. $100 million, y'all. It sounds good. But what are we really spending it on? And why is that test so that many hoops? Why is it and is it because they have to revamp their whole thing? I asked the question of New York as well, because if you're giving turnkey retailers, yes, I know the real estate is expensive, but is the part of making it turnkey with all of the things that will be in compliance also super expensive? Because it's not going to help the next round if they don't get turnkey. Right. We need regulation to be sensible. And the fact of the matter is, you don't need to have a prison built around your freaking cannabis, and you don't need to have the most state-of-the-art sustainability innovations to be sustainable.
Okay. And that is how you do a deep dive.
Yes.
Thank you guys for joining us so much.
Yes.
It was a great episode. Definitely enjoyed myself.
I did too.
I'm ready to go though.
Okay.
So make sure you guys follow She Blaze on Instagram, She_Blaze. And you better subscribe, and share us at the Weed Head on YouTube. And you can always find me on Instagram at Cannabis Socialite, and make sure you're listening anytime with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other places you hear podcasts on.
And of course, I am easy to be found on @Deshita Dawson on Twitter and Instagram. You can hear me every Thursday on the Sirius Channel 126, Larry Daniel Faber Show as well. And of course, you can find us all at theweedhead.com.
All right, you guys.
Yay! Another fantastic week. I will see you next week.
All right, bye.
Bye.